Hi everyone, today I want to share some important information and new findings with Masterworking in regards to skill ranks and passive ranks in particular. This has been the source of a lot of confusion. People upgrade their items and don't really understand when exactly does a skill rank go to the next or when does a passive rank increase. And we have finally figured everything out, so I can tell you all about it. At this point, I also want to give a shout out to Lani, who has actually confirmed this with some field testing. This was shared to me by Ava. We have a table here. So we had a data mine formula that we put into the default planner, and it seems like this matches exactly what we also found. So it has been tested in theory and in practice. You have to understand there are two different systems at work. There is one system that is for legendary items, and there is another system that works for uniques. So they have different behavior, and I'll go through both of them. Now let's start with the legendaries here. So this is this table here. We have a table that shows you the starting point of either having +2 or +3 or +4 to a certain skill or a certain rank, or even +1. We have a table down here. So these are all the possible combinations of, one passive on an amulet, two passives, or two to a category of skills, or for example 3 to a single skill, like a bash ranks on the pants or something, or a greater affix passive, for example. So for example here on my amulet I have a Frigid Finesse Greater that starts at +3. It turns out that the greater affix and for example like single like +3 to a skill is actually the same starting point for the purpose of this calculation. So if I have +3 to a passive through a greater affix or +3 to a single skill on the glove, that makes no difference for this. And then the same with the +4, for example. If you have +4 to a certain skill, it turns out you just have a certain starting point and increases by a flat amount regardless of the starting point. If you look at this table, you always have exactly the same upgrade behavior no matter the starting point for legendary items. That's kind of important because that behavior differs a lot from unique items, but more on that later. So what you need to know is that whenever you upgrade an item to 12, you will get exactly one upgrade to a skill or to a passive if you don't hit a Masterwork crit. You can see this here right now on my amulet. I have a +3 to exploit amulet, and if this is a regular roll, no greater affix, this is a 2. So upgrading to 12, it will go to +1. And then if you get one Masterwork crit, you go to +2. If you get 2 crits, it will be +3. If you get 3 crits, it will be +4. And this behavior is the same every single time, no matter the starting point. If you have like +1 to a passive, or if you have 2 to a skill, 3 to a skill, or even 4 to a skill with a greater affix, like this one, for example, I have a Heartseeker pants here. They started at +4 with a greater affix. I got 2 crits, and they ended up at 7. And if I had a third crit, they would be at 8. So this is the same behavior every single time, but there are still certain breakpoints where they increase, where you could try to min-max your character a little bit, in particular when you don't plan to go all the way to rank 12. So there are some breakpoints here, and what you need to understand is that a skill rank will always upgrade after a combined 30% of total upgrades. So you may know the small upgrades, upgrade 1, 2, 3, and then 5, 6, 7, and then 9, 10, 11. They're always 5% on all stats, and then the Master crits are 25% on a single stat. So this leaves us with a total maximum buff with triple crit of 120, or 95 when it's a double crit, or 70 when it's a single crit, or 45 when it's no crit. And 45 means you have one upgrade with a 30% breakpoint, and then at 60, for example, you would get to the next one. So you can see this in this table here as well right now. So with, for example, a skill starting at 2, 0 Masterwork crits, you will go to 3 at rank 7. And you see here the remaining 5 ranks that actually cost a lot of Masterworking materials do not actually add an extra rank anymore after that. As I mentioned, you only get +1 with 0 crits. But you get it quite early, you get it at 7. And likewise, when you get 1 proc, we have the first upgrade here at 4, right after the proc basically, because this is 5, 10, 15, and then 40. So you are over the 30% upgrade mark, and you have this here, and then you need another 20 to go to the next rank. And you can see this here. This will be 45, 50, 55. Here is a crit, so this doesn't increase all stats. And then at 9, you get the 60. And here we go to the second skill up. And it's the same here for 2 procs. So we have one here, and then we have the next one right after that at rank 10. You see this here. So we get 1 at 8 and then 1 at 10. So depending on, for example, if you want to hold on to an item for, you know, maybe later, or maybe you don't have the mats just yet to upgrade all your gear to rank 12, it's quite a grind. Or maybe it's just an item that you know you're going to replace at some point and it's not really good enough to be a forever item, then sometimes you can actually just stop at certain skill breakpoints here. So I've actually done this. I have stopped, for example, at 9 or at 10 on some of my gear because I did hit this 1 crit or I did hit those 2 crits. And then it just went to 10 and I was like, nah, okay, those last 2 ranks are pretty costly. They cost roughly like half of the total materials of upgrading to 12 basically. So it's kind of nice to save that sometimes. And in this case, you can just stop there and you have potentially your skill up already if you hit those 1 or 2 crits. So this is what I've done. Right now I have masterworked all of my gear to 12 because I'm about to push and all that. But before that, I had a lot of gear that was just stopped at like 8 or 9 or 10, exactly for this reason. Of course, if you want to go all in and you want to have this maximum rank on a certain item, for example, like my chest here, I have the triple crit on the subterfuge skills here. So in that case, you have to go to 12 and you have to hit all the crits. And it's pretty obvious, but at least when it's kind of like okay to hit some other stats as well, or when it's okay for the item to not be absolutely perfect and you want to save some materials, then this is a very good idea to follow basically. So TLDR, you get the first skill up at rank 7, and then at rank 9, and then at rank 10. So it kind of increases the ranks. There's just this proc in between basically at 8. So 7, 9, 10, this is what you have to remember for 0, 1, and 2 crits basically for the skill ups. So if you look at the planner here, for example, we can just make a frozen orb glove and we can go to rank 7 and you'll see that it will rank up at 7 exactly. And now, for example, if you put one of these crits on, it will not rank up, as you can see, it will rank up at 9. So you have to go to 9 and here you go, it's a +5. Or if we do the second crit, you see here it still did not rank up because it's only a 25% bonus if you get a second crit. You have to get 1 extra small round. So this means you have to go to 10. So this is exactly the same, no matter the starting point. So if you start at 3, if you start at 2, if you start at 1 from like a passive on the neck, for example, it's always the same. 7, 9, and 10 are the breakpoints, depending on if you have 0, 1, or 2 masterwork crits. Now let's talk about unique items. They actually work quite a bit differently. So this is a system for legendaries here, but uniques, they are actually on a separate system here. And basically, they have a direct multiplier to the base value that was on the item, and then it always rounds down. So you see this here, for example, right now on the Fractured Winter class. If you take this, it starts at 2 Conjuration Mastery, and let's say you want to rank that up. That's the only relevant stat on the entire item. So you start masterworking this up, and let's go to 7, where we previously said at 7 we had a rank up because that's a combined 30%. And you see here it is still at 2. And there's not like half a passive or something like that. It will remain at 2. And you have to keep going. And you'll see here that even at 12, it remains at 2. And that is because, again, it always rounds down on unique items. So basically what happens here is you add 45% in total to upgrades into this Conjuration Mastery. So this 2 becomes 2 times 1.45. It's 2.9. And it always rounds down, so it will go back to 2 and it will not actually rank up. And this is the same for all other unique items as well. So in this case, you have to hit, for example, at least 1 crit to get the upgrade. But in that case, you will probably get it like a few ranks earlier. So if you go down again here, so you can see this with 1 crit here at 6, you actually get the rank up. And that is because at rank 6, you're going to have 1, 2, 3, and then 5 and 6 for the small upgrade, so it's 25% combined. And then you have the Masterwork crit, another 25%, giving you a 50% bonus. So we have 2 times 1.5 is 3. So in that case, you have exactly the 3, and it goes to 3 as well. But then now when we like rank it up further, you'll see that it will not increase again. But previously, for example, when we looked at the legendary items, this would have gone to 4. So it's kind of important to remember. And another pretty important note here for unique items is also that you can actually masterwork crit some of them and not get any benefit whatsoever. And you can see this here right now. So when I put a second Masterwork crit, you see it remains at 3. So it actually punishes you for critting it again. And this is kind of important here. This will only be useful if you had all 3 or if you hit 1. And in between that, you don't really want to hit anything. So this second Masterwork crit is just kind of pointless. You have to go all in, go for the triple. For example, for the starting point of 2. And you can do the calculation again. So we have 45% in regular upgrades, on small upgrades. And then we have 2 Masterwork crits. It gives us a 95% bonus. So 2 times 1.95 is 3.9. So we have exactly the same problem that we had previously when we didn't have any crit. You are just barely not hitting the next rank, basically, after upgrading all the way to 12. And you will need that extra crit in order to get to 4 in this case. So there is one exception here for unique items, which is when you have exactly 1 to a certain skill or a certain passive. So you see this here, for example, again, the Fractured Winter Glass or the Banished Lord's Talisman that has exactly 1 every time for core skills. They have a special system. It's a little bit how the blacksmith upgrades used to work, where they introduced like a mechanic that after upgrading it to the maximum, it would get 2+2 no matter what. So there was actually not this rounding down, but instead it actually rounded up. So you can see this here right now. If you start at 1 Conjuration Mastery and you go to 12, it will actually go to 2 Conjuration Mastery, despite only having a 45% bonus without any crits. And in fact, you could even get to 3 by having 1 crit, for example. So this is kind of like a special case here for unique items where there's exactly 1 to a certain skill or a certain passive. But other than that, it's always the same system. You start at the base value and then you multiply that base value and round down depending on the upgrades. So you see this most prominent here on the Oculus, for example. We have 10 ranks to teleport. Greater FX makes it 15. And if you masterwork this, again, we get a 45% bonus just without any crits. It goes to 14. And then if we add the crits here, you'll see this will go to 22 because the total upgrade value with 3 crits is 120% bonus. So that exactly checks out. So this is 120% bonus of 10. It's 22. With the greater affix, it will be 27 because that's another 50%. So we have a 170% bonus and it's exactly 27 ranks to teleport. So this is usually how the unique items work. It's different from those legendary items. What this means in practice is that there are some different rules that you should follow when you upgrade your items to be the most efficient. So what you need to know is for legendaries, you are actually kind of incentivized to masterwork them as much as possible. In particular, they go to certain ranks where you get those breakpoints if you really care about hitting that skill rank or something like that. You are not really punished for having a bad roll on your item because after upgrading, you get relatively close to the maximum potential that it could otherwise have with like a good roll or greater affix, for example. Just having a greater affix is in the end only +1 rank and not much more than that on any legendary item. And likewise, if you have only a 1 to a passive instead of 2, you end up with only 1 rank less after fully upgrading it. And it's always the same. There's always the same difference that he had at the start is the same difference that he had at the end. But after masterworking it up and after, getting all those ranks, the difference is not really as impactful anymore because you have so many ranks extra already. And for unique items, it's actually exactly the reverse. You want to start at a high starting point. You want to have a good roll or you want to have the greater affix because here you have direct scaling with the upgrades and it multiplies the value that you had at the start. So if you have a low roll of a passive, if you have a low roll of a skill, then this will kind of like, show a larger and larger difference in what the item can actually achieve. So if you look at, let's say, Storm's Companion, you can have 2 to 5 to Wolves here. So if you start at 2 and then fully masterwork this thing up with a minimum roll, well, it's just going to be like much, much less. So if you do this here, the minimum value is 8 and then the maximum value, for example, will be 11. So there's a huge difference here between the minimum and the maximum. Whereas on the legendary items, it wouldn't really be such a difference. And again, as a reminder, when you have certain items that have, let's say, 2 ranks to a certain thing, let's say, again, the Fractured Winter Glass on the Sorcerer, so this one has 2 ranks, there are actually scenarios where Masterwork critting does not do anything. So here, when you get the second crit, for example, you get nothing for it. And only the third crit or the first one will actually matter. So those are some of the things to keep in mind when you're upgrading your gear, when you're working on your gear, when you're min-maxing. So you always want to double check, especially on those uniques, what exactly is going to happen with whatever item you have, with whatever starting point it has for your skill ranks. You want to try to map it out and see if, for example, a double masterwork crit is actually acceptable or not. If you really want to go for that triple in the first place, or maybe there's some other stats on the item that are also good enough so that you don't waste your materials. In any case, I hope this clears up a lot of things for you, so it certainly helped me to figure out what to do. And as I mentioned, we already have all the stuff in the planner for a little while now as well. And now we have been like confirmed that this is actually the correct behavior so far. If you find any weird behavior, any discrepancies, let us know. We're gonna update it. But for now, I think it's actually working just like the game. So glad that we figured that out. Again, shout out to Lani, who did put this together here. And well, hope that helps you on your journey in Season 4. And see you guys next time.